Hello and welcome to the Inside Risk and Compliance podcast. I'm your host, Adam Spencer, Director of AJ Fox Compliance, a specialist recruitment agency focusing on all things law firm risk and compliance. I have seen so many people carve amazing and fulfilling careers in this space, and it really has been a pleasure speaking to people who enjoy doing what they do every day. However, one thing that has really stood out to me is how hard it can be for people to access the bigger picture outside of their team, outside of their firm. We created this podcast to share with you some of the insights, experiences and stories of the most interesting people succeeding inside risk and compliance. Today I'm speaking to Charlotte Murray, Risk and Compliance Solicitor at Clarke Willmott. In today's episode we cover qualifying as a solicitor through the CILEX route. We talk about how to build the profile of your risk and compliance team within your firm, as well as about going viral on LinkedIn. Hope you enjoy. So Charlotte, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you, Adam?
Yeah, really good, thanks. Thank you so much for joining us.
Very welcome.
So we've obviously already done a little bit of an intro,
Yeah.
but obviously not going to have done as good a job as you can at describing a little bit about yourself, who you are. So for our audience, why don't you sort of explain who you are, what you do, and then can we hear a little bit about your journey and how you got into this world of law firm risk and compliance?
So my name is Charlotte Murray and I am a solicitor in risk and compliance at Clarke Willmott. I've been there for just over a year now, but my journey before that was a lot different, to say the least. So I, about 14, 15 years ago now, started in law. The usual route, went through university, LPC, wanted that training contract that not everyone always obtains. And I got into residential property to start with, and then moved into commercial property and came into London. Still looking for the elusive training contracts and not really getting anywhere. So went through the paralegal route up to senior paralegal. And I ended up working for a really interesting firm, which was a startup in London from a US law firm. Yep. And when I started there, the intention was for me to go into commercial property, but they didn't have that team initially. So I ended up doing a bit of everything, and that included some risk and compliance work. So that was my little intro into it, and I did that for about 6 months, really enjoyed it. But then as soon as the Compop team came on, I was just moved into them. And that I didn't really think much more of it because I was just still looking for the training contract at that stage. Went through another few firms in London and eventually qualified in a firm in the Shard in 2019 after 12 years of trying. And I actually did that through a slightly different route with CILEX, which I think we're going to touch on later. Then I went off onto maternity leave, basically. And during my time on mat leave, I just thought, do I want to stay in commercial property as a transactional lawyer, or do I want to do something completely different? And I decided that I would just throw caution to the wind. I handed in my notice and actually reached out to you guys. And you helped me obviously get my foot on the ladder with the first risk and compliance role as an analyst in the AML arena. And I did that for a year. And then on LinkedIn found a more generalised broader risk and compliance role at Clarke Willmott, where I am now. So that's kind of the summary of how I got to where I am.
Yeah, and everybody we speak to seems to come at this from a completely different angle. And a lot of people, I guess, making career changes. Yeah. How was that decision-making process?
Really tough. Yeah, really tough.
What was it? Was there anything sort of going through your mind that helped you get to that point of deciding to go in a different direction?
My daughter, to be honest. I mean, I think it's possibly the same for a lot of people in that position, or maybe something completely different that makes them change. But for me, I wanted to, the hours were very, very long as a transactional lawyer, and I just thought, do I want to carry on doing that and not spending as much time with her, or do I actually want to have a bit more of a work-life balance? And I thought back to my time at that US startup and remembered the risk and compliance. I thought, actually, this could be a really good avenue to go down. Might not work, but actually this, if I'm going to do it, now on maternity leave is the time that I do this, because if I go back into transactional law, when else, when am I going to do that? When can I actually take a break and cut the salary back and start again effectively? So it just made sense in that period to just go for it. But I mean, I did hand my notice in about 6 months into my maternity leave and didn't have a job.
That must have been scary. How did that feel when you did it? Were you comfortable it was the right decision? Were you panicking at that moment?
Comfortable it was the right decision. Slightly panicked, looking at my daughter thinking this has got to work out. It will work out. And then I kind of just enjoyed my maternity leave and I think I contacted you maybe 3-4 months before I was due to go back. And I thought, okay, now I need to start looking. And I did the 2 ICA courses. And I thought, actually, is this going to be as easy as I'm thinking? I think we had an initial conversation and I was like, I didn't even know there was so much in risk and compliance, and you filled me in on a lot of the different avenues I could go down. And I think it became a bit overwhelming for a period because I thought, maybe I hadn't really considered how many avenues there are in risk and compliance. I just saw risk and compliance and that was it. But challenging, but glad I did it.
Oh, good. It is amazing actually how little information there is out there. I don't know how you found it in terms of researching the space. Nothing cohesive, right? Yeah. Everything that we see is normally about the financial services sector, but getting that insight into, that's part of what this podcast is about, really giving people a bit more insight beyond a few things they can see on Google. Obviously you mentioned, searching for that elusive training contract, as so many people are, I guess, and then finding a different route to qualifying. And there seem to constantly be new ways of qualifying at the moment. So can you tell us a little bit about your route, how you found it, how you juggled it with everything else going on in your life?
Yeah. So I actually, I stumbled across it through a friend. So she was doing CILEX and she hadn't done the LPC. So she was just going to qualify via CILEX, then do the LPC and then go to the SRA and be admitted. And when she mentioned it, she said, Charlotte, why haven't you done this? I was like, well, I didn't even know I could, is the honest answer. And if I did know I could, I would have done it years ago. Now, the portfolio that I had to do was huge and, it took a lot of graft for a year to get everything done and get all the evidence together for the CILEX. But once that was done, effectively, once you're qualified with CILEX, at that stage, I don't know if it's exactly the same now, if you had the LPC, then the SRA admit you to the role. And I thought, why, I can't remember how much experience I had at the time, maybe 9 years. Why did I not know about this 5 years ago when I had rejection after rejection and just was losing the will to live with training contracts? I think the important thing is that there are so many different routes. And in risk and compliance, there's routes without qualification as well. So I don't think that qualification is the be-all and end-all. And I think that's what a lot of people, and it's easy to get hung up on it because you come out of uni and all you see is qualification in the standard way that, you've been sold it at university and you haven't worked anywhere yet. You genuinely don't know about all the other routes that there are. But these podcasts are great for just allowing people to see there's so many ways into the profession.
Absolutely. And I think, I can say it from my experience as well, when you go through the legal education, you are sort of, the blinkers are on and there's a narrow view and you just see one direction. They're almost sort of brainwashed into that being the path you must pursue, but there's all sorts of different directions. But when you did go through that CILEX process, you mentioned, portfolio, big piece of work to get that dealt with. So obviously a lot of time and energy involved. So what was what was going through your mind in deciding to do that? Where did you hope it would get you to, or was it more personal achievement piece, or what was going on there?
I think when I was doing the portfolio, I was already doing associate level work. So in a way, I felt a bit cheated by the system because I thought, well, I've been in law for so long now, I'm doing the work, but I'm not getting what I should for it because I'm a senior paralegal and I've got a ceiling above me. So it was part that and part the personal achievement of it. What was interesting was when I actually qualified after all of those years, I felt like I should be singing and dancing and I actually didn't feel much at all.
Oh, really?
And I think it had just been such a long time coming and had taken so much out of me that it was maybe a bit anticlimax for me, the whole qualification thing. And actually the year I qualified was the year I got pregnant. So I think that was what also led me to have such a big overhaul and career change, because I walked into maternity leave and I thought, okay, this should feel different. I should be so excited right now. And that excitement had just, I don't know, maybe been killed off by the length of time it had taken. But I thought I've got to do something really radical here. I still want to be a lawyer, but what I'm doing right now is just not. It's just not causing that excitement anymore that it should be in a job. And, you should love your job. I genuinely think you can love your job. And I think that's the important thing to always strive for, is that you genuinely can go into your job most days. Maybe you won't love every minute, but you can love most of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we have people listening, maybe they already work in risk and compliance and they're trying to work out whether to put that time and effort in to qualify. I know every case is different, right?
Yeah.
And people are going to be looking at it for different reasons. But is there any advice you would give to people deciding whether it's worth them doing it or not?
My advice would be it would really depend. I actually would suggest they speak to a recruiter like yourselves and actually get some information on the roles in risk and compliance, because I made the decision without having done that. And actually, when you look at the roles, there's people like compliance officers, etc., junior compliance officers, where you don't need the qualifications. Obviously, firms that are looking for risk lawyers, they are obviously looking for a qualification within that. Not to say they wouldn't potentially look at someone that didn't, but in their minds, they probably have a structure of someone that's been through that qualification route. But there's so many roles in risk and compliance, and once you're in it, let's using the compliance officer as an example, if you go in, there's nothing to say you can't go up to compliance manager, risk manager. We've got a best practice manager working for us who's qualified, but in the same breath, someone could have come up through that route without qualification and do, the same role. So I think the options are there. And I think it's worth people speaking to someone like yourselves first and then saying, okay, can we potentially get a foot on the ladder here without causing ourselves more stress and carrying on trying to get this all elusive qualification? Personally, is it what I want? Maybe they want to get that, and that's where they want to go regardless, because it all, that's what they want as a tick in their lives. But actually with risk and compliance, I think it's such an open field of job opportunities.
Definitely. Well, obviously I think that's good advice to get people speaking to us. But I think it is really good advice generally to just be looking into, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Can you write down why you're qualifying? Because we often speak to people who, I guess they've just seen it as a barrier. So it's just to remove a barrier, but they haven't necessarily got a definition as to where they're going to be on the other side of the barrier. And often, there's many opportunities out there, and even heads of roles, director level roles that don't require it. So it is really important, I think, to think it through. And on the flip side, we're also seeing quite a few employers who've got people within their teams going through that qualification process. And I'm not sure there's been that discussion internally. What do you think your team are expecting? What do you think your employee is expecting once they qualify? And because if those things don't match, you've got a risk there, right? If someone's going through the process of qualifying, expecting something to change, but that hasn't been communicated, it's not going to change. We're going to have somebody who's unhappy at the end of the day. So I think it's really good advice to think about why you're doing it, work it out, and have an actual plan. That's really, really helpful. Talking of people qualifying, you mentioned it sounds like quite we've got other firms who do this a little bit, but quite a novel approach at Clarke Willmott of having SQE. I don't know what you call them now, SQEers.
Yeah, I mean, we say SQEers, whether that's
Do you say SQEers?
Right terminology, okay. I'm not sure.
I like that. We're going to stick with that. So you've got SQEers spending time in the risk and compliance team as well. And we've had a few firms who second people into the team, and not many. And you guys are getting them in for a month, and you were saying maybe hoping you get them in for a little bit longer. And I know you'd mentioned that had been sort of eye-opening because they don't necessarily come in with any real idea of what you guys do and seem quite amazed about how much is going on. So what's that experience been like? And it would be interesting to understand, what do they think they're coming into? And then what do you think they work out by the end of it?
Yeah, so we started off, I think it was maybe just a bit of a trial thing at the beginning with only a few of them. And it took off so well that actually we now have all of them coming in for a month at least. I think we have got some coming in later in the year for maybe a bit longer. I don't really know what they walk in. I don't think people really know what we do. So they walk in with not many expectations apart from just trying to actually understand what the risk and compliance function does on a day-to-day basis. And they'll do work for each of us within the team. So the team is structured as risk and compliance, but there's claims and complaints within it, best practice. I deal with just the risk side with my boss. Then there's the compliance bit. So there's a few different arenas under it that they can help out on. The feedback from them as they leave, I mean, it's only a month, so it's quite a short, sharp introduction into risk and compliance, but we're a busy team. And I think most of them have been quite shocked at how busy we actually are and how manic it is. I think they sit there and say, we just had no idea that the team deals with so much. I mean, effectively, any query that no one else knows how to deal with in the firm lands with risk. That that is the end result. If no one else knows how to deal with it, it ends up in our inbox, and we have to figure it out. And I just don't think that's known. And also to see to sit on the team and see the emails coming in from different teams with the queries really helps them, because they go back out and they say to their own teams, their home teams is what we call them at Clarke Willmott, this is how we should be doing it, and actually this is what we can reach out to risk for, this is what we should be reaching out to them for, and they can help us with so much more than we're using them for. We are in effect in-house advisors to everyone within that firm, effectively to make sure that the regulations aren't breached. That's the bottom line. We're there to help everybody. And I think sometimes we just, I don't know, people just think we're just up there somewhere floating around. No one really knows what we're doing, or they see us as the enemy. But actually, we're there to support and make sure people aren't doing anything they shouldn't be.
I just wanted to take a moment out to thank our amazing sponsor, the International Compliance Association. The ICA are the leading professional body for the global regulatory and financial crime community, offering professional qualifications, world-class events and training. Go check them out online, and if any of the certificates or courses take your fancy, then you can get 10% discount using our code AJFox10 at checkout. That's fantastic, because you're going to create a little bunch of, I guess, mini champions, ambassadors, for risk and compliance, going in and educating the rest of the business. But it sounds like you find it a challenge generally, that there's a lack of awareness.
I think so. It's something we're working on within the team. So we're definitely we're creating some introductory videos that will be put out to the different teams and new joiners when they join, just to explain what risk compliance is, what it does, what they can come to us for, just to try and increase their awareness so that more and more people do contact us, because maybe people are a bit scared sometimes if they think they've done something a bit wrong to reach out. But actually, that's when you reach out to come to us so that we can go, okay, mistake's been made, that's fine, let's fix it. Let's stop this becoming something really big where a breach happens, and that's what we're there for. Yeah.
And you mentioned as well when we were speaking previously about the fact that building connections internally is so important with that as well, and building those relationships. Have you got any advice or tips for people trying to build relationships with other employees or stakeholders internally within risk and compliance?
I think it's important to, I guess it depends on what your job role is. I'm quite lucky in mine that I manage the risk inbox, so I end up dealing with quite a few people within the firm. But if that isn't your role, make it part of your role. Speak to your boss and see how you can be more involved with speaking to people within the firm, because that's how they build trust in you. And actually, outside of the firm as well, something that we didn't touch on earlier, when I was looking for my first risk role, I reached out to a head of risk for a bank, so slightly different arena, not the legal side. And I sent him a message on LinkedIn and said, look, I really want to change career. I don't know where to start. Is this even possible? Do you think I can? And I didn't even know him. He sent me such a lovely response back and said, he was the one that told me about the ICA. I think he may have mentioned your guys, and said, speak to Adam as well. I think he knows you probably through LinkedIn and connections as well. And it's utilise all avenues, utilise people within the firm, but build those connections outside of the firm as well, because it's amazing what you'll get from that.
And I know you use LinkedIn a lot actually as
well. LinkedIn a lot.
All different things. How has it helped you? Obviously there's a great example there of how it's helped you in your career, but what is it you love about using LinkedIn?
I think LinkedIn I've always been quite open on LinkedIn, which, across the years, not everyone's always agreed with. You've got two different kind of camps on LinkedIn of whether it should be personal or not. It has only done me, benefits to be like that on LinkedIn. I've actually, when I used to look for commercial property roles, I found a lot directly through LinkedIn, just by connecting with people and again, building those connections up. And it's done me well, with the risk and compliance, because this job at Clarke Willmott, I was on a group on LinkedIn, and it was shared on the group from Jen, actually, my boss. She posted it and it was shared within this group. I saw it and I contacted her on LinkedIn, and that's how I got the interview. And I just think opening up personally as well allows people to connect with you and see who you are, and know that you're not just a robot within a firm. You're actually a human being that deals with horrible things and great things in life.
I think it's really important, and I think it's a great opportunity for people to share those personal stories in an environment where they can reach a lot of people and allow topics to come to the fore that otherwise might not be talked about. It's an interesting one, because there is always that divide, isn't there? Some people are really against personal content. I think the evidence is overwhelming that personal content wins.
I absolutely.
It's the most viewed stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of posts last year that went viral, and they were actually posts linked with being a parent in the working world, and they blew up, and I had over 1 million views on them, and
Wow. I didn't realise it was that many.
it was insane, and that's personal content, and it was really personal content, but. Whenever I do still try and post with a professional angle, so there's a point to it, and the point with that was that it's very hard for working parents to return to work with the cost of childcare. That was one of them. And the other one was to do with, I think it went a bit viral all over the place, with people changing their profile photos with their children to show that we are, there's families here. I'm not just a face at work. I have a life behind me. I think you're right. The evidence is overwhelming, and maybe everyone else should join.
Or if you're not happy with that, if you just want it to be professional, that's fine. My tip is go into the settings, just unfollow people. Yeah. You don't have to view it if you don't want to view it. So I always find it funny when people get frustrated about it because they can choose not to view it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's great that it's been so sort of beneficial for you. Are there any challenges you see facing the legal profession at the moment that might sort of have an impact on the way that risk and compliance is working?
Yeah, AI. I think is a big topic at the moment. I mean, obviously, ChatGPT took the world by storm last year, and there was a lot in the press about it, and a lot of some of the bigger firms have taken that software on and changed it slightly and are using it. We've seen stuff coming through where it's been where AI software is being used for due diligence and drafting contracts, and I think in some firms it's being used to draft initial legal opinions now as well. Really? So the software's there and the technology's there. From the risk side, I think what is still undecided is how good it actually is and how reliable it is. And I think when we've had software coming through, we've really looked at it and looked at what are the risks here. What are clients going to sue us because something's gone wrong with this AI piece of software? And I think the way at the moment that we've got around it as a firm is that the humans are still checking. So whatever's being pumped out by the AI software is being checked by people within the firm. And I think that's probably the approach a lot of firms are taking. I think we are a long way away from AI just doing it all and it being so reliable that we don't have to look at it. And I guess it's marrying up. Humans make errors in their work, otherwise there wouldn't be PI insurance. But it's marrying up the two somewhere in the middle so that AI can do enough with a quick check so that it does save time, but that the risks are mitigated as much as possible. I think there's also a question around young lawyers because I think the tasks that AI is doing, such as the initial contract drafts and due diligence, they're tasks that young lawyers would normally undertake. So if you're not allowing them to undertake those tasks and they're just checking, are they losing out? Is there a foundation of learning there that they're not going to get, and will that actually be detrimental to them as they grow in their career? I think it's an interesting area that raises quite a few questions. Yeah,
I find it fascinating. It's almost like there's an equivalence to the calculator. In that takes away the ability. My mental arithmetic is terrible, and that's probably the calculator is probably to blame. So are we going to see a similar effect with ChatGPT? Wasn't there a case recently where somebody had referenced case law, which I think ChatGPT had made up on the spot?
Probably. I've seen a lot in the Law Gazette, etc. There's been a few things recently, and I think there was, I can't remember the law firm, but there was a law firm, I think, that pulled it back slightly because it went very wrong. So whilst I think it's going to continue coming in, I don't think we're going to go back to not using it, and I think it's just a case of watching this space really to see where it goes and how far it takes us.
It's in its infancy, isn't it?
I agree.
I've got a friend who is a teacher at school, and we're always asking him, what impact is it having? And I think because it's in its infancy, he said it's normally, when the students decide to use it to answer questions, it's normally pretty apparent if the kid's 15, 16, suddenly their essay takes a very different turn. You can tell ChatGPT's been involved. But I'm fascinated to see what the appliances will be in the legal sector. Just dialing back a little bit, obviously you were talking about having the SQEers in your team for a little bit and people not understanding necessarily what risk and compliance people do. If you were to try and explain to if we've got any people who don't work in risk and compliance properly yet out there listening, or even if we might have some people who are paralegals, fee earners listening, how would you describe to them what risk and compliance is all about, and what do you do? I know every day is probably different, right?
It is. And we had a bit of a joke when I started in my first few months, because my job description didn't really end up matching what I was doing, because it was so varied. And I had someone ask me, and I was like, I actually don't know how to answer that question apart from to say that I investigate people. But it's a bit of a bit of an in-house joke in the team. Obviously, we do internal investigations. That's part of it. But really, the broad description I would give it is that we are there to make sure that what is happening within the firm is marrying up with the regulations that are set, so the SRA Code of Conduct, and to make sure that people are staying within the lines where they need to be, and that if there are breaches, which of course there are, that they are dealt with properly, and that we amend procedures, protocols to make sure those breaches don't happen again. So it's just a constant moving ship, really. I don't deal with data protection, so I guess there's that side of it as well. And I also don't deal with claims and complaints. So there's so many different areas you can be involved in. It's a very broad field. And what I love about it is that every single day is different. The queries that I get into the risk inbox, I started a spreadsheet when I started at Clarke Willmott, just in case anyone else ever had to pick anything else up. I gave it up within about a month because I thought this will be great, because people can come in, they can see the query, see the answer, and they've got a template. I don't get asked the same question. So, I've got over 1,300 emails in my little saved folder of things I've answered since I've been there, and every single one's different. So how do you describe that to someone? So it's, you
keep
help
you on your
with,
toes.
It does, and you help with anything and everything. It's a real learning curve, but it's really exciting on a daily basis, and it just doesn't. I can't ever see it getting boring, because the risk and compliance world just keeps moving forwards, and there's more things that come up on the back of that.
That's amazing. So what would you say if we've got listeners who are not working in risk and compliance, maybe considering getting into this space? Maybe they're just considering a career change, or maybe they've just started in a new law firm risk and compliance role. What advice would you give them about their career path?
Just do it. Just make the move. I guess it depends what they're doing beforehand, but it's a really fulfilling career, and you genuinely feel like you're doing something important for the firm, because you have so many people that actually it's taken me, maybe 9 months is when it started to happen. I got people calling me on their own without going through my boss or coming through someone else. I now have people that are just starting to reach out to me on my own, where they just obviously see me as someone trusted that they can ask questions to. And it's just such a nice feeling to know you can actually help people in their careers. I mean, you're making sure that they keep their career. If they go wrong, that's it. So it's a nice feeling to know that you're actually able to help people to fulfill what they want to do as well.
I think people often forget that, the level to which you're protecting people, and to some extent things like, from a money laundering perspective, you're actually stopping money getting laundered.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Terrorist financing.
We have a separate onboarding team that deals with the money laundering. So again, it doesn't fall within my role now, albeit I did do it at the prior firm, which you obviously helped me with that role. But yeah, for that team, they are preventing money laundering, and I think sometimes it's easy in the nitty gritty of it and the procedures within the firm for that message to just be lost.
Yeah.
But actually, when you step back, risk and compliance on AML, all of that function is so important to keeping the firm actually functioning on a day-to-day basis.
Fantastic. Well, Charlotte, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. That has been brilliant, hearing your story and your journey, and learning a little bit more about your experience in the world of risk and compliance. So thank you so much.
No, thank you very much for having me, Adam.
We really hope you enjoyed listening to today's podcast as much as we enjoyed recording it. If you did, please do us a huge favour and share it with a friend or a colleague. The more people we can get listening, the more time and energy we can get into recording more episodes and getting the best guests and the most interesting stories and insights. I want to say a huge thank you to the ICA for their support, to Ty and Karem here in the studio, and a massive thanks to Kat for making sure everything runs so smoothly behind the scenes. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, follow us on LinkedIn to make sure you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening.